Hey people, today we're just going to, there's not going to be any picking today, but we're just going to go through some basics because due to an incredible amount of requests, I found it necessary to make a video on what each pick is for and basically how to use it and what situations might call for each pick to be used. So thank you Sparrows for starters for sponsoring me. There are basically two types of picking. There's raking and there's single pin picking. Raking involves movement of a rake in and out of the lock, basically focusing on the withdrawal of the rake to provide a somewhat of a ramping effect on the pins, shooting them up and using kinetic energy from the key pins to the driver pins to basically shoot them up above the shear line and under slight tension hold them there until all of the pins are above the shear line, and of course consequently the plug will turn and the lock will open. So we'll go through the rakes first. This rake I dubbed it the worm rake because it kind of looks like a worm. But in effect, a lot of thought and a lot of planning went into this rake. It kind of just looks like a squiggly worm, but in fact, if you look closely, you can see that it's actually graduated. There are 3 segments, and they gradually, as you can see, the first one is laid fairly flat. The second one is a little bit flatter, and the third one, see, they're on graduating angles like this. That's to give you a wide array of angles to simulate whatever bidding you may be attacking. And of course very light tension, focusing on the withdrawal stroke, and basically rakes are basically, you can use rakes in any lock that they will fit in and withdraw smoothly and easily. So the worm rake. Also this tri-peak, or it's commonly known as a Bogota. They come in the triple peak and the double peak type. And again, this provides somewhat of a ramping effect. As you withdraw the Bogota, or the tri-peak as we call it in this case, we don't want to step on anybody's toes. The key pins, as you withdraw, they sit in this valley, and as you withdraw the pick, they are ramped off each peak. Again, when you're withdrawing very quickly, they ramp off the peak, and therefore shoot the key pins up, and through, again, kinetic energy, transfer of energy, similar to a pool ball hitting a cue ball hitting a pool ball in billiards, will shoot the driver pin above the shear line, and of course allowing the lock to turn and operate. The next one we have here is the I call it the Best Buster because it just opens so many Best brand locks with it. Again, it uses somewhat of a ramping effect. Generally, with raking, there's a few different types of raking, not just the withdrawal stroke. There's like jiggling, where you sort of jiggle it around in a circular motion and rely mostly upon luck. A little bit there's a bit of skill involved in raking, but generally speaking, a lot of luck is involved. Depending on the bidding of the key, you may simulate and emulate that bidding just by sticking this in and pulling it out. You never know. It's like I said, it's relies upon luck to a certain degree. And the same applies to your standard city or town or ripple rake, as it's commonly referred to. This is probably the most common rake you're ever going to see. They come in almost all standard manufactured sets. They're the go-to rake, generally speaking. You know, they will open a lot of locks. And again, it's you focus basically on the withdrawal stroke, but jiggling and wiggling and just moving it around with a developed sense of feel, you will eventually build your skill set, and raking becomes very effective. But again, there is a certain degree of luck involved. Now, for single pin picking, you use hooks, and basically you start off with your standard short hook, or lifter as it's commonly called, and the variations of this hook are basically just to reach pins that this particular hook will be incapable of reaching when certain pins are set in the lock. For example, if your first pin in the lock is a very deep cut, a 9 cut, where the pin just has to be lightly touched for it to be set and have the driver pin caught above the shear line, and the pin directly behind it is a very high cut where you have to push the pin very high. Obviously, this type of hook certainly will set the first pin, but getting in and up behind that first set pin to reach the second pin and push it all the way up as far as it can go, you're going to require something with a steep curve to it, like this, a high hook. And so that's basically what the high hook is for, follows the short hook. Now, there are two variations made by Sparrows, designed by me, just to reach in behind and attack whatever pins may remain and not be are unreachable by the standard short hook. Now, sometimes when you have fully set pins, the short hook will not squeeze under. There's not enough room. So enter the half diamond, because anything you can't get your hook under, in and under, you can wedge the 45-degree angle, the leading edge of the half diamond. You can wedge it under there and gently lift. And the same sort of thing applies to the hybrid. It has a 45-degree angle leading edge, allowing it to penetrate into the lock and lift very minute increments, while effectively reaching to the depth into the lock that's required for opening. Okay, that's just basically a basic overview of which picks, what each pick does, and what its use is. It's by no means an exhaustive lesson, but it's just a basic primer. A lot of people think that each pick has a specific and dedicated use, which is absolutely not so. In my next video in this series, I'm going to go into tensioning, the various tension tools, how to use them, how to prepare them, and whatnot. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away. Until next time, peace. Thank you, Sparrows, for the sponsorship. And until next time, have fun and don't use this for illegal purposes.